It's Sunday, so you know what that means. It's story time, another episode of A Weapon of Magical Destruction. I can't wait to jump into this one. This one should be a fun chapter. But before I get into that, I want to address that Audiblegate has been big news in the indie writing community right now, not just for the authors, but for the narrators out there. And when I do something like this and I read for you guys, this in no way takes the place of what an audiobook takes to produce. The narrators that work on these books, they are professionals. They are voice actors who know how to read properly and not flub their words like I do all the time. They know how to do the different voices, and they have professional equipment that they use to produce these audiobooks. When I do this, this is something that I'm doing for myself as well as for you guys, just to kind of give back to the community and to share a little time with you guys. So this in no way takes the place of an audiobook. And eventually I do want to put this book out in audio. And when I do, I will be hiring a professional to do that so that I can make sure that it is perfect quality for you guys to listen to. Now, the big issue with Audiblegate. See, look at it. I can't even talk without flubbing. The big issue right now with Audiblegate is the fact that Audible is using their returns policy to hurt indie authors as well as the narrators, especially those that are using royalty share in order to produce books, to take the royalties away from them by using the word exchange instead of telling customers what they're doing, which is returning a book. And they allow this up to 365 days after a book has been sold and listened to. And it's just a really bad policy that pulls money away from the people who pay to create those audiobooks for you. So I'm not going to do the big soapbox thing for that long, but I wanted to make mention of that, especially since I do read chapters every week for you guys. I wanted it to be very clear. This in no way takes the place of an audiobook. This is just fun for me to enjoy reading with you guys. And especially if Joe's out there, which I know he is, teasing Joe about whether or not he knows who the villain is. Now, again, because we have met pretty much every character, those of you who are following along who have not read the books before, I would love to know at this point you've met enough people to figure out or to start figuring out who the villain is. So post it in the comments below. Let me know who you think it is. I'm not going to tell you if you're right or wrong, but it'll be fun to see at the end who was right and if that was a surprise or not for you. So I want to say hi to all my friends out there. We got Joe and Regine. Oh, we got Regine on both Facebook and YouTube. Well, I'm glad you're still able to watch. So let's go ahead and get into chapter 21 for this week. Honey, I'm home. Sage returned hours later than she had originally planned. Devon had fed her, and after she'd revealed her newfound resistance to alcohol, Devon offered to test her shot for shot. Stinking of tequila, Sage sauntered into the apartment, stone cold sober. See? I told you I'd be back. I had my doubts, Matt said, staring at the television. His hand was clenched tightly around the remote as if ready to crush it with anger. You've been acting strange, and that's saying something. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were trying to insult me. Sage marched to the fridge and grabbed 2 beers. But I'm glad you're mad at me. It shows me that you care. She came around, placing herself in line with the TV, and held out a bottle to him. Peace offering? He couldn't resist. Even as he looked ready to strike, when he faced her, the anger melted away. You're like a sister to me. I don't want to see anything bad happen to you. Matt snatched the beer and made space for her on the couch. She settled down next to him with a sigh, snuggling close to his massive body. This was home. This was where she felt safe and loved, where no one was trying to manipulate her. And at the same time, it was a place where she had to keep a dangerous secret. Normally, she could unload all her troubles and trust that Matt would help her work through them. Smart, sensitive, at least towards her non-judgmental. But this was the first time that she couldn't just let it all out and feel better. This There was no explaining this without proof. Even the most open-minded person needed to see the magic happen to believe it. She'd only sound like a raving lunatic if she unloaded all that she'd learned to Matt, especially now that there was some kind of a weapon killing supernatural things and starting wars. Her problems had increased tenfold thanks to what she'd learned from Zach, and not even a tray full of tequila had worked to deaden her nerves. She grabbed the beer out of habit when what she really needed was a gallon of water. Where's my easy button? If only, Matt chuckled. And don't think you're getting to control the remote tonight. Oh no, I wasn't even going to try. Being there next to Matt was soothing, and she didn't want to get up, even if her throat burned for water. He flipped through the channels, looking for something to watch. Hundreds of channels, and nothing seemed interesting. But Matt continued to press the remote as if the next channel might be a winner. Sleep must have claimed them, though Sage barely remembered closing her eyes. But when a knock woke her, the sun was sending down piercing shafts of light through the window blinds. Not it, Sage groaned. She might not have felt the alcohol the night before, but that didn't spare her the headache to end all headaches. Matt pushed her off him and tossed the TV remote in her lap. If it's a damn clipboard, I'll beat him with it. He lumbered over to the door and checked the peephole. They can shove whatever it is they're selling straight up there. Sage's stomach lurched as she tried to stand. She ran for the bathroom before the regrets of the previous night came back to haunt her. It's for you, Matt's voice echoed all the way into the bathroom. I'm not home, she replied quickly, brushing her teeth to rid herself of the lingering smell of dragon's breath. Gray's voice stole her attention. Sage, we need to talk. Ugh, she groaned and threw her toothbrush down at the sink. Of course he'd have to show up. You okay? Do you want me to get rid of him? Matt appeared at the bathroom door. Their eyes met through the reflection of the mirror. Sage wanted nothing more than to be rid of Gray. That asshole. But everywhere she went, there he was in some fashion or another, cold and unfeeling with a smirk she'd happy to smack clean off his face. But telling Matt to send him away wouldn't work. He'd just find a more nefarious way to get Sage's attention. And the last thing she needed was another vampire showing up on her doorstep. No, I'm fine. Which one is it? Matt looked confused. Should I tell him to go? The headache wasn't helping either. Not fair. She shouldn't have a hangover if she didn't at least get to enjoy the alcohol that caused it. Let him in, Sage groaned. She'd be damned if he thought she was going back to Asset, though. If nothing else, she'd make that perfectly clear. Gray could go stick his machete where the sun didn't shine if that was his motive. Splashing water on her face and making quick work of tamping down her hair, Sage managed to look human by the time she made it back to the living room. Gray was standing there in the kitchen like a soldier at attention. In the light of day, his fedora and leather duster combo completely failed to resonate the badass vibe that he was going for. Matt took his place next to Sage like her personal bodyguard. New boyfriend? Boyfriend? She snorted, completely ruining the mad dog stare she was giving him. Hell no! She'd rather punch him in his stupid face than kiss it. How could Matt even think that? She took a breath to stop her laughter and tried to reclaim the angry glare she hoped would solidify her position in defense with Gray. Well, that's a relief. Matt winked and elbowed Sage in the arm. We were going to have a serious talk if you were. You two are hilarious. Gray's eyes were locked on Sage as if pretending Matt weren't there. I came to make sure you were okay after what happened. Liar. He already knew she was fine. His little vampire lackey had no doubt reported her whereabouts. But she couldn't call him out on that with Matt standing right there. Matt turned his scrutinizing gaze to Sage, all humor fading to concern. Something you forgot to tell me? Sage crossed her arms and stared back at Gray, willing him to feel her contempt. How dare he come here and stir up trouble, especially when he knew that she had a roommate? A human roommate at that. If your intent was to start drama, leave. Now. Matt cleared his throat to get Sage's attention. I'm fine. We're fine. She struggled to downplay the mystery. He's just an antagonistic prick here to make my life hell. Can we have some privacy? Gray asked, finally acknowledging her roommate with a sidelong glance. You've got some balls, don't you? Matt scoffed. She doesn't seem to like you very much. Yours are bigger, Sage nodded to her roommate, feeling the sudden surge in testosterone threatening to suffocate her. Let's go for a walk, Gray. You know how I feel about that. We can talk here. If your bodyguard gives us some breathing room. He jerked his head towards Matt. Don't worry. I'm not going to hurt her. Do you have to work at being an asshole, or are you just naturally good at it? She regretted telling Matt to let him in. Gray provided more drama than her aching head could deal with. Not a boyfriend, not a friend I've ever met. Why is it we're letting him into our house, rude as he is? Matt glowered back at Gray as if sizing him up. Friend of the family, unfortunately. She forced her tone to remain civil. Here to make sure I'm not losing it after Mom died. She didn't let on that Gray had been the one to strike the final blow, but the restrained anger in her voice was enough to set Matt off. She's cool. I'm taking care of her. Go tell Mark she's not going back to Phoenix. Matt took a step towards Gray. She can speak for herself, I think, Gray responded. If she didn't stop these two idiots were steps away from a fight, and as big as both of them were, Sage wouldn't risk getting in the middle to stop them once they got going. It's fine, Matt. She threw her hands into the air. Just give me a few minutes, please. I'll hear whatever Gray needs to say and then send him on his way. Are you sure? Matt asked. She nodded curtly, and with a huff, Matt walked towards his room. She'd pay for that restraint later, one problem at a time. You have 5 minutes, Sage shot at Gray. Why are you following me? You know why. I used up my freebie, remember? She threw his words back at him. After what happened, you're not safe, and our numbers are dwindling as it is. Gray's tone softened, but the look in his eyes remained sharp. Ever the company man. Through and through. If he'd had half a brain, he'd have told her the same thing Devon had. His agenda had nothing to do with her safety. You people have been nothing but rude and manipulative to me. Why the hell would I go back there? Because you belong, regardless of how you feel you've been treated. He held up his wrist and showed off his mark. Says the guy who used a vampire to trick me, she replied bitterly. Matt was in the next room. He didn't need to hear her arguing over vampires or magic. Screw the damn mark. It's ugly. Just like that prison of an agency you keep trying to incarcerate me in. Zach served a purpose, providing a safe way for you to see what you'll be up against next time you run into someone more dangerous. She nearly slapped him, but held her arm stiffly. Asshole was too good a name for him. Don't give me that teaching me a lesson crap. It was manipulation, plain and simple. What do you want, an apology? No. Good, because you're not going to get one. I'm trying to help you. What happened to your mom can and will happen to you out here in the open. Gray's voice sounded as strained as if desperate to control his volume just as she was. I might have believed you if you'd been honest with me from the start, but rather than tell me the truth, you used and manipulated me to get what you wanted from me. You're no better than the other scumbags out there, and I'm done being a pawn in your little game. If you came here to drag me off, you can forget it. Go to hell. I tried. Remember that. Gray turned and stormed out of the apartment. Sage growled in frustration. And when she turned around, Matt was standing there looking like a deer caught in headlights. See? They don't give up. And I am not going to work for those people who killed my mother. She shouted the words loud enough for Gray to hear, though he'd already left the room. Matt opened his mouth, but no words escaped. Mama was a badass. I'm not my mom, she said as an explanation. Could have fooled me, honey. He slowly backed away to the couch. Too bad. He could have been cute if he lost that ridiculous hat. Made him look like such a tool. You can have him. She threw herself back onto the couch. Oh no, drama-free over here. The nerve of him coming here, she growled, trembling under the rage that she fought to keep in check. Something you want to talk about? What did he do to manipulate you? Matt asked cautiously, as if knowing the response might send him right out the door to defend her honor. She caught the innuendo and quickly answered, No, nothing like that. I would never. Ugh. She shivered at the thought of being close to that jerk. She'd sleep with the vampire before ever considering touching Gray. It's okay. We all have regrets as long as he didn't force himself on you. You and I both know I'd have ripped his nuts off if he had. Matt choked on his laughter. And you say you're not a badass. Talk a good game. You know, you can confide in me, no matter what. I know you didn't just go stay at a hotel when you were gone. I can't, Sage started to say. But I also know about secrets. If you've got one that you're not able to tell me just yet, there's probably a good reason for it. So, out of respect for our long-standing friendship, I won't dig. Just please know I'm your non-judgmental confessional when you need it. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned, Sage snickered. That'll be 5 Hail Marys and you're buying breakfast, Matt elbowed her. You are one of the few people in the world that I can trust, and it's because of that I have to keep you in the dark. Mom was in some crazy stuff at work, and unfortunately, I've got to clean up a few messes she's left behind. Matt nodded with acceptance. Tell me when you're ready. Until then, I propose we hit the DVD collection since there's nothing to watch on TV this early in the morning. No magic. I've had quite enough of that crap, Sage said. Oh, and no romance either. So that is chapter 21. God, I love Matt. He is such a good roommate, friend, surrogate brother. Oh, I love him. He's such a good character. And I love the fact that he was there standing next to Sage, ready to defend her if need be. That is exactly what you want in a good friend. And Sage needs that right now. So let's go to the chat room and see what I missed. Oh my goodness, look at all the stuff in here. Hi, Rebecca. And yes, I did flub quite a bit. Did you lose count because there was that many? Boo for sober. That's right. Alcohol is a magic that no longer works on Sage. Calling it Matt's the bad guy. Oh no! Of all the people. Okay. All right. So we got one vote for Matt as the bad guy. Oh, the universal easy button. Right? We all need one. Oh, please give me an easy button. I could use one. What? That's what it sounds like. It's natural to being an asshole. She should have gotten water when she was there at the sink doing her hair. Yeah, she could have, but tap water in Vegas isn't that great. Me too, Rebecca. I love Matt. He is so good. Wait, what? Did I miss a comment? This is Katie writing, not Jane or Connor. I must have missed something. All right, somebody explain this comment, please. Is there something in the writing that you found issue with or that you particularly liked? Yeah, I'll go with that. I like that. Awesome. Not much happening. Doesn't make you wrong. Well, there's a little bit happening in this chapter. We do have Gray admitting to using the vampire. So he's admitting his fault there. And we're showing the wonderful relationship between Sage and Matt because that is an important relationship. She needs him. He is her touchstone to reality in this new world. So a little bit of, the B story, as we talk about sometimes in writing, has to be kind of developed. And that would be one of the B story elements, is that personal relationship between those characters. You wouldn't write the brother figure to be the bad guy. Oh, because Matt says that, or because Regine says that Matt is the bad guy. Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Would I? Well, that's up to speculation until you get to the end. Like I said, you have met enough characters, and Rebecca, I know you know the answer, but you guys have met enough characters now to start figuring out who the villain is, who is pulling the strings. I'll watch the rest of the chapters in this one to make a terrible guess. It's my hope that by the time we get to the end, when the the bad guy is revealed, it's a moment where you're like, oh, you know, I want it to be a really good kind of good surprise. You know, a moment where you go think back and you're like, yeah, that does make sense. I don't want it to be one of those moments where you're like, oh, really? That's the bad guy? So we will see. And I did. I don't know what Joe did. Joe, what did you do? Joe's guess, for those of you, is that it is Zach that is the bad guy. And that Zach, if he's not the bad guy, is being employed by the bad guy. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But that was the chapter for this week. I will be back next week with more chapters. Or chapter. Let me actually take a look. As I know some of these are shorter chapters. And if they're too short, I'll put them together because I don't want to make it an itty-bitty video. I want to make it a decent-sized video. That one actually, we might have to. Yeah, I may end up doing 2 chapters next week just because of the amount of pages between them. So I aim for about 20 minutes on these because that's a good watch time. It doesn't take too much time out of your day. But again, I love doing this, and I love that you guys are listening, and that makes my day, and it makes me look forward to Sundays. And we've had so much crap going on in 2020 that we need these, you know, tiny moments of positivity, these things to look forward to make it worthwhile. So, as I say every week, take some time out, do something for yourself, make yourself feel better. Personal care is important, and I will see you guys next week with another chapter.